50 and running a marathon, a channel dedicated to health, diet, fitness, and goal achievement. I'm your humble host, Topher, and I hope you'll like this video, subscribe to the channel, and more importantly, weigh in with your thoughts, opinions, and relatable stories in the comments section. This is the third in a three-part series about yoga. Well, I want to start this video off like I started off Wednesday's video, and that's with a couple of definitions that I used in that same video. I'll put a link down below in the description to that video. But the definitions that I want to use, the first of which comes from yogabasics.com, and I'm going to go ahead and read it right off the chart to you. Yoga is a meditative process of self-discovery and liberation. And I like that one a lot. Another definition that I came across for yoga, I don't know the author, I don't have any attribution to it, but I liked it as well. I'm going to go ahead and read it too. Yoga is a type of exercise moving your body into various positions to become more fit or flexible, to improve your breathing, and to relax your mind. I think both of those are great, and I think both of those are great definitions of yoga because neither of them make mention of spirituality. And while yoga did grow out of the Hindu faith, I'm not going to endorse or denigrate Hinduism or any other religion for that matter. I know that there are some religions, and in particular churches, that believe that yoga runs contrary to the tenets of their religion. And so if that is the case with you, I'm certainly not suggesting you go against your principles or your religion or your faith or your spiritual beliefs. Nancy and I have been using yoga for over 10 years. It's helped me in a great deal of ways with both physical and mental health. That's what I'm suggesting here. And the type of yoga that I'm talking about is for practitioners who basically are relying upon it for its physical and mental health aspects, not so much spirituality. Okay, that said, now, we are going to talk about the benefits of yoga as explained by science, and full disclosure, there's really not a whole lot. So let's get that out of the way right to begin with. The National Institutes of Health, I came across this blurb from one of their posts, and I'm going to go ahead and read it to you as well. Although the amount of research has not been significant, preliminary scientific evidence shows that yoga supports stress management, mental health, mindfulness, healthy eating, weight loss, and improves quality of sleep. So I can say that yoga has been helpful to me in pretty much all of those respects. But as I said, that kind of sets the course for the rest of this video. A statement like that tells you that, as the beginning sentence, although the amount of research has not been significant. And there's a reason for that. There hasn't been a lot of scientific-backed evidence. And let me start very quickly with the history of yoga here in the West. Now, I mentioned on Wednesday that there's some discrepancies, or at least some debate between yogis as to the age of yoga. Some say that it goes back as far back as 4,000 years. Others say it goes back even further. Some say that the yogic texts really aren't any older than the 18th century. So it's difficult to say, and I'm not going to get into that debate. But I am going to make note of the year 1883, because that is the year that the Swami, I'm going to read his name because it's difficult for me to pronounce this or even remember it, Swami Vivekananda in 1883 came to the United States, and he set up world conferences here in the United States, and he translated yogic texts from the original Sanskrit into English. And so that is as I see it, the beginning of, or it's not as I see it, that's historic evidence, historic data, that yoga came to the West, and in particular the United States, in the year 1883. That's the starting point that I'm going to use. Now, it took well over, in fact I would say, a half century for yoga to move anywhere out of the fringes of society. And now there was obviously immigrants who came to this country, to the United States and Canada, from places like India and Pakistan and Bangladesh, all of which at that point pretty much were India. A lot of those people obviously were practitioners of yoga, And it was mainly the fringe elements outside of the Indian subcontinent immigrants who were doing yoga here in this country, especially for the first 50 years that yoga was brought here. So right up to about 33 would have been the time that maybe there was some sort of incorporation into it. I personally believe, and this is nothing more than my opinion, that it was the Beatles' trip to India that largely brought yoga and many other Eastern philosophies and thoughts to the United States. And this past February marks only 55 years. So if it's only been 55 years that anybody has considered yoga even slightly normal, you can understand why that would be difficult to find scientific evidence backing it. However, there is some, and I'm going to mention a post that I came across in Johns Hopkins from their website, and it lists the benefits of yoga. So I'm going to list those benefits of yoga, and this again is from Johns Hopkins. Again, it is a post, but Johns Hopkins is one of the most notable and reputable scientific and medical centers in the United States. So let me go ahead and read the list to you. Yoga is responsible for the improvement of strength, balance, and flexibility. It is helpful in back pain relief, easing arthritis symptoms, beneficial in heart health, makes for better relaxation and sleep, creates more energy and brighter moods, helpful in stress management, better self-care, and connection to a supportive community. And that is something that unfortunately I cannot address because Nancy and I have been using a DVD made by Body by Yoga. I've not been compensated in any way, shape, or form to endorse them, but we've been using the same routine. We definitely need to switch it up. And we probably need to start taking some classes too. We just haven't been able to find it into the budget, but in the end, that's nothing more than an excuse. If you want something, you will do it. And COVID for a while is what kept us from going to classes, but eventually we are going to have to start going to classes. And if you're looking to get into yoga, I'm going to highly recommend to you that you get into classes. As it mentioned, the connection to a supportive community. As I said, I cannot speak to a yoga community, but I can tell you, after having been in runners community, that is one group that is very, very supportive of its members. So if yoga is even a third of what the support that I came across among runners, then I would say it's definitely a supportive community to which you would want to connect. And one more thing I want to point out from that post from Johns Hopkins is the mention of the fact that the U.S. military is now incorporating yoga into its healthcare. So to me, and maybe you can weigh in on the comments if you think that I'm being perhaps old-fashioned in my thinking about the U.S. military, but to me that came as quite a surprise that the U.S. military was willing to embrace something like yoga in its healthcare. According to the CDC's research, between the years of 2012 and 2017, the number of adults doing yoga increased from 9.5% to 14.3% in the United States. And while that is in fact a substantial amount of growth, when you have less than 15% of the entire population engaged in an activity, the sample population that you can then use for scientific research is absolutely minuscule. I mean, so very small. That's why most of the benefits of yoga that are found are basically practitioners self-reporting. And in the end, we know our bodies better than anyone else, but we also are very guilty. All of us are very guilty of lying to ourselves. And that's why scientific backed studies are always going to do better than self-reporting, because it's difficult to argue with numbers. It's not impossible, but it's difficult to argue with numbers, and it's difficult to argue with scientific method as opposed to this is what I feel. So, but I did find a post in Harvard Med, and again, this is a post, not a study, but the findings from Harvard Med basically listed the same benefits of yoga that I mentioned previously in the Johns Hopkins post. But there was one that Harvard mentioned that Johns Hopkins didn't, and I'd like to address that specifically, and that is better body image. And when I say better body image, I'm not talking about standing in front of the mirror and saying, man, am I sexy? Although, naturally, with over the course of time, that's bound to happen. But what I'm talking about with better body image is focusing on things and having an awareness of your breath, your pulse, your heart rate, your digestion, your circulation, even tactile stimulation. All those things that you think that you can't experience or you can't know, you actually can. And with yoga, and when you're thinking about your breath, and when you're linking your breath to those two movements, that's a case of making a better body image. And the more aware you are of your body, the more difficult it becomes to do things that are detrimental to it. If you have sat and just concentrated on your stomach and what you're feeling in your stomach and what you're feeling in your intestines, focusing on that, it becomes more and more difficult to add food and other things that you know are bad for your digestion and bad for your circulation. You sit and think about your breathing for even just 2 minutes, and all you do is focus on your breathing without making any amendments to it, without trying to breathe slower or faster or anything else. You're bound to recognize later on your own breathing. So somewhere down the road, we're going to discuss the link between exercise and better body image. As I said, that's something for the future. And we'll probably even do probably a 3-part series just like this one. But we are going to discuss how oftentimes setting up a better diet for yourself oftentimes leads to exercise, and how oftentimes doing exercise leads to a better diet. So there you have it. That's how we're going to round out this 3-part series in yoga. I want to thank you for watching, and I want to ask you to check out the companion blog to this channel. I'll put a link to it down in the description of the video itself. I also want to ask you and remind you, please, to comment and weigh in with your thoughts and your relatable stories in the comments section, because this isn't a channel about me. It's a channel in which that I started, and I'm using myself as a focal point because I don't know anybody else better than I know myself. But I'm just here as a conduit to get the discussion going, to get everybody talking and everybody helping one another, because that's what I really want with this channel, is to set up a forum where people can just talk to each other and help each other and offer helpful suggestions. And I thank you for watching, and remember, only by taking care of ourselves first are we capable of taking care of others. Topher.